Listen, you got to appreciate routings that don't have IATA codes.
Yeah. I can't pronounce these. Hello and welcome to episode 114 of Dots, Lines, and Destinations. I'm Stephen Seagraves, joined this week by Seth Miller, who is in Norwich. Norwich? Hey, Seth.
Norwich. There are no W's in, apparently, like, British English. I haven't quite figured it out. I'm doing my best not to stand out as an American. It's failing miserably.
So you were just at Farnborough, and so now where is Norwich in comparison to that?
Northeast by about 150 miles or so.
Okay.
Basically, way out east of London.
Okay, gotcha. So what are you doing out there?
Visiting vendors. I have some appointments this week with various manufacturers and such, and airlines and things throughout the region. So
very cool.
Yeah. Took the train up here today. Gonna fly from Norwich to Exeter to Manchester on Flybe later in the week. Collecting dots and lines, as it were.
Yeah, and I think
apparently a destination, since I'm spending the night.
You've got it all in one. We actually talked about the dot a little bit before the show. Southend, which is a small airport in London area, the London area, and you wanted to talk a little bit about small airports and taking advantage of them when you can. And so, where were you coming from, and how did you choose Southend?
On that particular segment, I was coming from Faro, Portugal, which is sort of the southern tip near Gibraltar area, or as close as you can get to Gibraltar and Portugal. Still, you have to drive through Spain to get there, but and essentially for reasons that are crazy, involving mistake fares and me panicking and being stupid. For the day of travel, I had two different tickets. I had both from Faro, one going to Gatwick on British Airways in Club Europe, so their business class product, and a second one on EasyJet in coach, second to last row. Very, very much coach experience. Although in the end, it turned, and that one was to the Southend Airport, which is essentially an hour or so east of London, a little south of where I am now. We can put a map showing some dots on, around the London area and where it is. And you and I actually sort of chatted about this through texts or whatever before I took the flight, and sort of for me to try to decide which of those two flights would you take, right? Very much coach on EasyJet seems ostensibly very much worse than Club Europe, even on a crappy A319 going to Gatwick. And yet, when it came time to go to the airport in the morning, that was not the flight I chose, right? I chose, and similar time, similar price, in that they were both paid for. I ended up taking the coach flight to Southend instead.
Yeah.
And it seems bizarre to say that out loud, right? I mean, who takes the coach flight instead of the business class one? But, for a 2.5 hour segment, I actually think it was the right choice.
Immigration was probably easier than Gatwick?
So 150 or 160 passengers on board. It wasn't completely full. It helped that I had both seats next to me empty. I had my own row. But even without that, I bought a sandwich on board for £6.50, I think. So like $3 is that now? No, $8, I guess, or so. I got a soda, a Kit Kat, or a Twix, I think, and like a toasted bacon steamed sort of sandwich kind of thing, which was quite good. I imagine reasonably the same as what I would have gotten as a breakfast on Club Europe. But more importantly, the experience on arrival was so much better. The day before, I was in Gatwick and then had to connect onward to Faro, and it was 30 or 40 minutes through immigration. There was a long line for baggage claim. There was a long line at check-in. All of those things sucked. And I was through immigration at Southend in like 2 minutes.
Oh, wow.
But it helps that I was one of 2 or 3 passengers on the plane that did not have an EU or UK passport.
So you had the one dedicated line.
Basically, yeah. So even though I was the last person off the plane because I was hanging out taking pictures and being silly, by the time I walked into the terminal, there was one person ahead of me in like the non-EU passport or UK passport lane, and I walked up and I was like, yeah, you can use this one. So, but even putting that aside, like, I don't know, it was like you could see the baggage claim and you knew it was working because you could look out the window and watch the guys driving the little truck across. Like, all of those things about it just seemed easier and better to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then were you headed into London Center?
I was not. I was headed to Farnborough, for the Airshow, which that part made it probably not the smart choice. It was an extra 30 or 40 minutes beyond that. But if I was headed into London, the train to Southend goes from, I think it was Liverpool Station.
Yep.
And it runs like 4 times or 5 times an hour, and it takes 45 minutes, which, depending on where you're going, the trains from Gatwick go to a different station, but are also 30 or 45 minutes. And, it was so similar in that context that, yes, it's this random, ostensibly remote, crazy airport. But, from a traveler experience going into London, depending on where you're going, it's actually not all that different to me.
Yeah, I'm looking at the map right now, and Gatwick and Southend look almost equidistant to, central London, whereas Heathrow's closer.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Heathrow, unless you want to pay for Heathrow Express or Heathrow Connect, you're on the Tube. The Tube is actually like an hour 10 into town, and this was 45.
Yeah. So it seems like London's pretty well served by airports. I mean, they have Luton, Stansted.
Stansted. And Southend is relatively new sort of commercial service.
Okay.
It's only EasyJet and CityJet right now. So not a ton of flights, not a ton of options, not all of them are daily. There's all these other sort of challenges around it. But it's one of those things like, if you can get it and if you can make it work, I feel like it was a really very much a better choice than doing Gatwick that day.
Yeah, no, it seems like it. Definitely seems like it. And I see this, especially in Europe, there seems to be smaller tertiary airports for most big cities, and Ryanair, EasyJet, some of the low-cost carriers serve.
Right. Yeah, and I guess here's the question. Like, would you go to Frankfurt Hahn? And you did, right? Is that where you did your Junker from?
No, I haven't flown into Hahn, actually.
Okay, you were some other random crazy airport? Okay. Some of them are truly ridiculous, like Paris Charleroi. Is that a Paris one or is that a Brussels one?
That's Charleroi is the Brussels one, I believe.
Okay. So there's a different Paris one also. Like those are very remote and it's a bus and it's like an hour and a half or 2 hours kind of thing. And those I would say, well, no, because it's inconvenient because you've got a 2-hour bus ride.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just feel like when, it's worth looking and making sure because some of them actually aren't that bad. And this is one, I know they're trying to sort of build up commercial service there. It was like an adorable, cute little airport that you could easily walk in and out of, expect no lines kind of thing. And I love that.
Yeah. Not a big monstrosity where you're fighting crowds everywhere you go.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. It didn't matter that it had no elite status and there was no express lane and all those other things. I could just sort of walk in and do my thing.
Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah. I think, didn't you fly out of one in Stockholm as well?
I flew into Stockholm Bromma.
Bromma, yeah, the one that's north. Or something. Yeah.
Well, it's actually like the in-town airport.
Oh.
Which is interesting. Brussels Air does a flight from Brussels there, and that was actually similarly convenient. Like you walk in, it was 80 people on the plane or something like that. Everybody walked right in, bags came out quickly, walked outside, hopped on the bus, and was in downtown 30 minutes later.
Oh yeah, it is really close. Looking at the map, that's really close.
Yeah, it's and like great views flying in. It was dark because it was January when I did it. But that was a really fun, easy airport. Also, like there, the time savings isn't as huge because they have the express trains and the express buses, but to the main airports also. But it was still probably 10 or 15 minutes closer than Orlando was.
Oh wow, yeah.
So in both cases, time really not a critical function for me on that trip. Like, right, I landed and then spent 2.5 hours getting my ass to Farnborough and like fighting my way across town and dealing with all the idiocy. So. Because it's another hour past London by the time I got across. I think from Gatwick I might have saved 45 minutes on that. But that was the same 45 minutes I would have spent at immigration at Gatwick. So
yeah,
I think it's probably a draw.
Yeah, how stressed were you, versus being stressed in the immigration line and all that crap you have to put up with. No, I think it makes sense. I think it's a great point, and people should kind of explore it a little bit more when they're looking at airports all over the world. I think even in Asia, I think you have some tertiary airports in cities that aren't necessarily cheaper, but they might be more convenient.
Yeah, I mean, Bangkok's an easy one, right? You've got, and I guess Kuala Lumpur also. Bangkok has the Don Muang, which is the old international airport, and then the new one, which is a name I can absolutely not pronounce and never will be able to, so I'm not going to try. It starts with an S. And, that's an interesting one because I actually like taking the express train into town from the new airport.
Yeah.
And from the old airport, you're pretty much stuck. I mean, there is a train, but it's shitty times and infrequent, and you're mostly stuck in a taxi. And you get stuck in Bangkok traffic, which is horrible.
Yeah.
Most of the day. So, not always perfect, but certainly where it does work, it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So you also had this trip was just, and we'll have to talk about Iceland in the next episode, because I think you said, like, if we talk about Iceland, we just fill the whole show up. So,
and then some.
And then some. So, but some of the lines you got in our lines for the show are helicopter lines in the Faroe Islands. And you went from
incredible
Torshavn to Stora Dimmen to Frodba.
Yep.
Which is I'm surprised I can actually pronounce those. But it's really cool.
Listen, neither of us have any idea if you pronounce them correctly.
Well, I tried.
That's what I called them while we were there, but I'm not sure what that really means.
And so did you stop did you stop at each place, or was it just like a through flight in the middle destination?
I mean, the middle destination, we landed and were there for 10 minutes while they took some other passengers off and some cargo off. And then we took off again. We didn't get off the helicopter at that middle stop. And part of me is a little disappointed. There was supposed to be another stop along the way. There's one island that's sort of super deserted, and like has no one living on it, but every now and then the helicopter stops there, or it can stop. There's sort of a flag stop thing. If someone's booked it, they'll stop.
Gotcha.
And the day we flew, no one booked it. But yeah, in the Faroe Islands, Atlantic Airways, which is the national carrier, and I'm not sure how it's a national carrier because they're part of Denmark or the Kingdom of the Netherlands, or not Netherlands. No, they're part of Denmark, but Denmark, they're like a separate autonomous region, sort of like Greenland, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a weird setup, but the Danish government subsidizes the helicopter service so that the locals can basically get to and fro when they need to. Otherwise, it's like long ferries and travel times. And, when we got to the end, we hiked around for a half day and then took a 2-hour ferry back. So it's, 25-minute helicopter ride or 2-hour ferry.
Yeah.
And there's reasons that doing it on the helicopter makes sense, but it's subsidized. So our 25 or 30 minutes on the helicopter cost $30 each.
No, it's not bad at all.
So, it's like 10% of what it would cost if you did it as a helicopter tour. Typically, it's about $10 a minute is average for sightseeing types of events on helicopters. So, we got it for $1 a minute. And the catch is you can only book it one way because they don't want people to use it as a tourist.
Oh, gotcha.
But I'm not the first person to think of this, obviously, and people, the internet was very helpful in putting together the plan. But basically, we got down to Faro, which is sort of at the southern edge. It's on the southernmost island. It's not all the way south, but from there, it's like on the other side of the little harbor where that heliport sits is the ferry terminal. And so it was like an 11:15 or 11:30 helicopter flight. Got down there at noon. We had lunch, we hiked all day, and then at 6 o'clock we got on the ferry back, and we were back at 8 o'clock.
Nice.
So, yeah, full day, but I got to tell you that it was like gray and cloudy and raining a decent amount, and we were super low in the helicopter, like skimming the water top. It was one of the things like, maybe we'll go above the clouds. Like I was hoping we wouldn't be in the clouds. That was the only thing that I was really worried about, and also like that the flight would cancel for bad weather. And in the end, we like got a tiny bit off the helipad from the starting point, and then dropped off. It was right on the coastline, sort of dropped out over the water, went down from there, and then cruised right across. We flew so low, it was awesome. Just incredible views, and like both over the water and over the islands, because there's a bunch of little islands out there that you like hop right over, and like the bright greens and all that other stuff. It was incredible.
Did you get some good video?
I did. I have it. I need to upload it one of these days. I'm still writing up, January and December, so maybe I'll catch up soon. But.
Awesome. Did now in the final destination in Frodba, was there transportation? Like, how did you get around? Is it a big enough town so that you would get,
There were. I mean, we walked. In retrospect, maybe we shouldn't have. We walked into town and then hiked for a few hours and then walked to the other side where the ferry terminal is. As we were leaving the helipad, a car stopped and was like, "Do you guys want to ride?" And offered up, and we should have said yes. Both my wife and I are a little stubborn when it comes to that sort of thing, so we said no, and we hiked. It was an extra mile or mile and a half of walking that day. But, in the grand scheme of things, we didn't need. It didn't hurt us necessarily, but it slowed us down a little bit. It was a long day, a lot of walking.
That sounds like fun, though. I mean, it sounds like a good day.
Great, but it's also like Frodba, this town, and it's it's probably the third largest city in the Faroe Islands. We were in the tourist booth sort of trying to get maps and make sure we knew we were going for our afternoon hike. And the guy in front of us was trying to find a rental car. And so the woman who works there is like calling around trying to find this rental car for him. And she calls the one people and they're not answering. She calls the other company and they say, no, they're sold out. They're sold out because they only have one car.
Oh my gosh.
And it was rented. Yeah. So like the one car was rented. And that's why the rental car company was sold out. That's how small and sort of random and remote these islands are.
Wow.
So super cool. Although, got to say also, apparently there's a petition that's been started. They want Google to come in and do the Street View for them. And then they're calling it Sheep View because basically it's all sheep. And it's sheep and waterfalls. Like you sit out the window and it's gorgeous green, lush. Not like it's it's not super like thick, heavy grass because there's not that much soil.
Yeah.
It's not that deep soil. It's like volcanic and whatever, but it's over time, lichen grows and then it dies and becomes dirt, and then grass can grow and whatever. And so like the circle of life, it all works, but there's not a lot going on there, but it's super like that bright green that you can get when it's a lush sort of waterfall rainforest environment. And it's gorgeous, but you get waterfalls and sheep nonstop. And apparently, I saw this the other day. Someone posted on Facebook. I haven't had a chance to go look at it, but like, yeah, they want the sheep view cameras to come and take a look.
Yeah, they should just hook up like one of those Google Street View cameras to a sheep and just let it walk around and be like, well, this is the country.
Yeah, they don't move that much. I gotta tell you, from what we saw, they mostly just sort of hang out.
Yeah, Faroe Islands have been on my list, and I shouldn't say list, but they've been on my radar for a long time.
Yeah,
and like
I feel like we talked about this one time with Cynthia.
Yeah,
and we're like, yeah, we should plan a trip and I'll go there.
Yeah.
Oops, I did it without y'all. Sorry.
It's okay.
We can go back. I'll go back. It's that cool.
Because what I thought was, back, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago when we first started talking about it, they had an Avro that was flying some of the routes, and I think those have all been ratired, and that's all Airbus traffic in and out. Yeah,
it's all 319s and 320. I think it's a 319 now.
Yeah.
The Avros are gone. And actually, as of the IATA switch in October, the schedule change, they're moving from Reykjavik to Keflavik.
Ooh.
So I got one of the, last few flights into downtown Reykjavik with them.
Are they closing downtown Reykjavik to commercial traffic?
No, it's a bigger plane and they don't want the bigger commercial plane there.
Oh, gotcha.
It's bigger and louder. But it was fun on Twitter. Someone was like, I posted a picture of my bag tags showing RKV, as the code. And someone's like, oh, but don't you mean KEF? It's like, oh, no.
No, sir.
Yeah, no, sir. I'm getting the good one. Thank you.
Oh.
So, yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. So
we loved the Faroes. We only spent 3 nights there. Probably could have done a couple more if we wanted to. It's very much outdoorsy, like hiking and nature. We actually didn't get out to the west to see all the puffins and birds and such. That was the thing we missed. So,
well, yeah, it means you have to go back.
Yeah, and the helicopter flies there too.
Well, I'm all about a helicopter ride, so I'm kind of I want to go look this up now and maybe plan a trip.
Yeah.
So
the biggest challenge was for the route we took. They only sell the tickets 7 days in advance.
Oh wow.
So there's a little bit of like, I got to make sure I buy them on the right day and we don't get blocked and it sells out. It turns out the day we did not sell out, but in the weeks leading up, I was searching and a bunch of them did sell out. So I started to panic a little bit, but we got there.
Well, hey, I'm thinking when you come to Portland, maybe you should fly some of like the Pen Air routes and Seaport while you're here, just for fun, like random Coos Bay, Pendleton. You got to get those places in. I mean, and it's a Cessna 208. You fly right by Mount Hood. Yeah. Destination wise, of course, you were in Farnborough. I think you came back with a ton of news, you kind of left out of there. You've been tweeting some of the stuff, but we can talk about some of it too. So big stuff. What was the big things that you saw there?
Well, I mean, the Antonov 124, 128.
That was the biggest thing, literally.
That's the biggest thing, literally. I got to go on the 737 MAX 8, which is the new 800 series MAX that Southwest will take eventually. Is Ship 4, which is actually the Southwest plane. So it has their seats, it has their kit on board. And that was actually pretty cool. I got to play with the Wi-Fi and the in-flight, the streaming media entertainment system on that. So that was, from a practical perspective, very cool. I got to sit on Qatar Airways, one of their G650s.
Ooh.
Yeah, not practical at all, but good God, is it gorgeous.
The only way to fly.
Seriously, just stunningly beautiful. They have crew rest seats on the private jet, so it can do the longer stages.
Wow. Now, one thing I saw I kind of gave you a hard time about on Twitter, and you didn't answer me, so I assumed you were pissed.
Sorry, I was probably asleep.
No, I think you were pissed off. The Southwest seats. I was asking, does it live up to the width?
Technically, yes. The armrests are narrower, so your hip room is a half-inch wider. But the seats themselves are not wider. You're right. I am bitter about this. This was announced in April 2015 as the new widest seats. And I was bitter then because the vendor refused to actually let us into their booth to see them at the Aircraft Interiors Expo show.
Yep.
And it took a while. I finally saw them in October of last year and measured them and was like, no, they're exactly the same. And and have continued since then to measure them and know that they are in fact exactly the same. And everybody keeps saying, no, they're wider seats. And I'm just really, really mad that essentially stories are getting published because people are trusting the airline instead of looking at the reality of you can't make a 737 any wider because the fuselage didn't change diameter and the aisle didn't get narrow. So yes, I'm bitter. The seats are fine, right? I sat in a few different seats across the plane. It's interesting, the 800 series, it's now just an 8, not an 800. The second exit row, I guess it's like the third exit row, sort of. The second exit row doesn't have a window seat. So it's like a 737G.
Really?
Yeah.
Weird.
Or they're 500 even, that has like the 2 seats instead of the 3, and then the guy behind the seat behind has lots of extra legroom. So that's an interesting sort of arrangement on board.
So you're saying that the row behind the exit row has a seat with unlimited legroom?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think it's technically considered an exit seat.
Yeah, because of the...
What I don't know is... Yeah, but I don't know if the 2 next to it are considered exit row also, or not. Like, are there 3 exit rows now, essentially? We'll have to see what what it comes back with when the seat map is published and whatnot. But that was interesting. But I think news-wise, the biggest challenge is what the hell are we going to do about the 757s? Yeah, and what is Boeing going to do?
And we've talked about it on the show before. We were like, man, there's nothing out there that we know of that can replace the 757. There's nothing like there's no options. You can't use a 321. They don't have the range.
The 321 LR has most of the range with a slightly lower capacity. But there's nothing out there, right? It's unclear that it will have the overpowered engines that will get it off the ground quickly enough on a short field, or hot and high, and some of those other challenges. And to be fair, the markets where that's necessary are relatively few.
Yep.
I was sort of going through and looking at sort of some of the numbers and sort of where I thought they matter. And if you look at United's transatlantic and Delta and American's United transatlantic 752 routes, you look at Aristana has a decent chunk of 752 operations right now. And that's kind of it for pushing the longest bits. United does a few to Hawaii still also.
Yeah.
Like Denver gets a 752 these days. But it's a tough one because Norwegian upgraded one of their 100 Neos order. They upgraded 30 of them to the 321 LR. And they said they're going to use those for international service, including, they said, to South America.
What?
Well, exactly. Thank you for putting that in such clear context. I was looking at the map of, based on, what the range of those planes is, they can basically, from Lisbon or Barcelona, they can hit the north coast of Brazil, but that's it. I don't know where they think they're going to go in South America, unless they plan on running South America to the French islands that they use for their America flights, for Guadeloupe and Martinique.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, was Port Petrie, could they use that as a starting, jumping off point?
Sure, but I mean, I just don't see a volume of traffic to Brazil at all right now, and especially not from random small French islands in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're thinking, but that was in the press release. North Africa would work.
So my question then is, what did Boeing say anything at Farnborough about a 757 replacement? Do they even realize they have a problem?
Yes and maybe, I think, are the two answers to those two questions. They did talk about it. Randy Tinseth, who is VP of marketing, I think, for commercial aircraft, basically the guy who's responsible for helping drive that decision, spoke for 30 or 40 minutes on Thursday of the show, basically after everything's wrapped. And there was 6 or 8 of us in the room, and it was a very sort of casual, free-flowing conversation with a few people grilling him, no, really, what the hell are you guys going to do? And he sort of played off, and then the follow-up question was, no, really, what are you guys going to do? And his response was essentially, we're not going to do anything. We wouldn't have anything to roll out before the 777X comes to delivery, and that's end of this decade, early next. And even if we do it, we're trying to figure out if there's really demand in the market. And they're looking at which aircraft are selling and which aren't, and which, where they see demand sort of plays along with what I was saying about there's just not that many airlines that need that particular route profile. Right? They basically don't see it as a huge demand.
Yeah.
So I could easily, it is a hole in their market, but I could see them saying, screw it.
Yeah, just don't even worry about it.
Yeah. And whatever comes along will be, in that size and space will be for, the next cycle, not the Max/Neo cycle. So
do you think then that we could see something like a modified 787 that would perform? I think the 787-8 is probably the smallest you can get that thing, right? It's not like...
you could probably pull out one fuselage section, jack the tail up a bit bigger, and, but the fact that it's twin aisle makes it a whole different ballgame. It's a wider aircraft. It has different gate requirements. There's all sorts of things that go into it once you do that. And the airlines that want this sort of thing want it in a single aisle.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard. I feel like there's a few, but again, there's a couple hundred is the size of that market. And maybe it's a little bigger. The 321LR will get, I want to say it's got maybe 50 or 60 orders so far now.
Mm-hmm.
So, right, not huge, but it's, starting to become significant. And a lot of those orders aren't until the end of this decade anyways. So, if Boeing has something that says they're going to do it, they may only be a couple years behind by the time they deliver versus, a lot of commitments and talk now, but we're talking about deliveries 3 to 5 years out still.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's a problem that Boeing doesn't want to address right now. They see it 10 years down the road as being a problem when the 757s that are out there hit their end of life.
Finally retire, yeah.
And so they're like, well, we'll just address it then, and the airlines deal with that.
Yeah, and the challenge is, it's a little bit of sort of gamesmanship, and who's going to blink first, right? Are they going to be able to sell these planes later? The plane that doesn't exist yet, are the airlines going to continue to wait, or are they eventually just going to commit and say, well, we got to do something, and sort of rejigger their whole route networks around this aircraft that doesn't exist?
Yeah, exactly. What else did you get out of Farnborough?
Some cool toys. I got another Model A380 I'm giving away.
Another one.
Another one, yeah, a Qatar A380. Oh, it's an interesting one. Qatar Airways invested significantly in 2 airlines at Farnborough this year.
Really?
They didn't buy any airplanes. They bought airlines instead this time.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah. 10% stake in LATAM.
Interesting.
Yep. Both One World. A lot of financial pressure and challenges for the South American carrier right now, namely in Brazil, but Chile and Argentina aren't doing spectacular either. But yeah, $600 million for 10% roughly is the numbers on that.
Wow.
And then, and Akbar is talking about doing, joint ventures and code sharing and loyalty reciprocity and all these other things at some point down the line. Not yet, but right now it's just sort of a, investment to help them, financially and operationally. And then the second one came a day or two later, and that was Meridiana, the second largest carrier in Italy. They have like 1767, I think, that comes to JFK a couple times a week during the summer, but mostly flies like to Sicily and throughout Italy.
Do you think this is to like counter Alitalia and Etihad's little? I
think so. I think this is right. And they also have a decent sized stake in IAG, which is British Airways, etc., Iberia, Aer Lingus, Welling. But these two are clearly ones where Qatar can exert a lot more control versus the IAG one, which not so much. And yeah, it seems like they're trying to sort of build up their own little, private network.
Kind of scattered all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, right. There's plenty of random small carriers that need investments along the way, or could use some and could use a little bit of help in terms of feed and getting, to play with the big boys. And Qatar Airways is quickly becoming close to being one of those big boys.
Now, one thing you mentioned to me before was the SSJ Sport Jet. Did you?
Yeah.
I forgot about that, and I just remembered.
Me too. Yeah. No. This is Sukhoi has their 100-seater jet, and they're trying to come up with ways to sell it. And I give him credit. The guy doing the briefing, thank God he did it in English. The press conference started in Russian, and I was very worried for a variety of reasons. Among them, everything was being said twice, and it was taking a long time. And I was running out of schedule. But no, the guy who gave the briefing, a vice president of something, who gave the briefing on the sport jet specifically, basically went in and he said, listen, the market for the 100-seat regional jet is relatively small, but that's what we've got. So we can either fight for every little bit of market share we can get of the existing demand, or we can go out and create markets. And what we're doing here is going out and trying to create this market. And what they're trying to create demand for, 50 or 60 of these jets that will be designed to seat 40 to 60 people instead of 100. More space for the athletes. They want to put a training table in the back, like a massage table and some, facilities. There's the coaching section will be sort of like party seats, for lack of a better term, facing each other. I'm sure there's a word for that, but yeah, a set of seats facing each other with like a big screen TV for reviewing film. The athlete seats they've got them set up for like pulse oxygen, the like fingertip monitor thing where you stick your finger in
Uh-huh.
and it watches your blood pressure and heartbeat and oxygen and all those other things, whatever. Like that's part of the seat now. And also a nice in-flight screen, an entertainment screen and all that other stuff. So it's an interesting concept. You may remember that Nike and Teague, which is a design firm, came out with like a similar sport jet kind of thing for 767 a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And theirs was all drawings, right? And like they got a whole bunch of press about it, but never actually tried to do anything. It was like, wouldn't this be fun? And then the whole world ignored them after that. Well, that's true. The world wrote a ton of stories about them, but no one ever cared to do anything. And these guys, their comment was essentially, yeah, that was a joke. Ours is for real. We're going to have a mock-up of the cabin on display at the Rio Olympics. We're doing this thing.
Interesting. That's kind of cool. I mean, it's a cool concept.
I mean, they still got to sell it, right? They still got to sell it, but it's cheaper than a 767.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet that they'll sell it very cheap if they can, get a commitment. And what he's looking at is, can they get the Russian National Hockey League to buy 20 of them?
Yeah.
And every team gets one, or it's half the number of the teams, and they're used as charter for flying the people around. Right? Delta has a contract right now for the NBA where they fly custom 757s around. Could Sukhoi get in on that? The other interesting thing about it is, could this be a way Sukhoi starts flying in the United States?
Yeah.
The U.S. market is by far the most significant for professional sports.
Yeah, and you could see like company, sports cities, big cities. I'm thinking like New York or Houston even, or Chicago, where they share them between the teams. They're like, oh, well, we just reconfigure it for baseball at the end of the basketball season or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and the number of people involved is relatively similar.
Yeah. So that's a cool idea and a cool concept. I wonder how they came up with, like, I wonder how someone was in their office going, what would be a great market? And that's I think it's pretty outside the box thinking by Sukhoi.
I would guess that it was a couple of guys with a bottle of vodka at a hockey game, not some guys in the office.
Well, you're more realistic than I am.
Say knowing anything and having no insider knowledge of the situation, but the AirAsia bought 100 A321 Neos also, and apparently that started over a random dinner in London at some Iranian food restaurant. So crazy things happen from the most random of places.
Yeah, because there's not many operators of the Sukhoi, right? There's like Interjet and, of course, Aeroflot, and then CityJet is the new one, right? Between Paris and London City.
Just a handful. Yeah, just a handful.
Yeah. And so then on regional jet side, there's the C Series, which was also on display at Farnborough.
Yeah, I actually got to fly on it. Did I tell you that?
You mentioned that you were going to, but I hadn't heard from you since then.
I did. It flew. We landed. It was great. No, it's super quiet. The middle seat is wider. All the things that they said are true.
That's nice. 2-3 seating, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Which
so it's yeah. Oh, so go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't mind that setup actually, because I'm a 2-seat kind of person. But
yeah.
It
was interesting. You go back and forth with the vendors all saying theirs is better than the other guys, right? And so the Embraer guys are saying, well, yeah, but there's middle seats on their plane, and right, and Bombardier is saying, right, but our middle seats are wider and the whole thing is more comfortable and it's a taller cabin and it's a wider cabin. And actually they did a thing where they showed off a fuselage cross section of what the E90 looks like inside the C Series. They basically put like a cardboard mock-up inside, cutting off the extra seat.
Wow.
And showing the lower ceiling and things like that. And so, it's sort of tit for tat, but, the question becomes, do you want the 2-seat or do you want the 3-seat and you hope for an empty middle?
Yeah. Yep.
And a little bit of game theory there, and, flight loads aren't 100% yet. So if there's going to be an empty, it's going to be likely the middle seat before it's going to be one of the pair. But I don't know. It was interesting sort of conversation to have with the Embraer guys and acknowledging their view on the thing, but also sort of looking at it as, well, right, but if I'm going to be in the seat anyways, do I get a bigger window or whatever? And the Embraer windows are huge still. So, the E90s and E95, it's the E2 series of the E-jets, I guess, is what we're talking about. So the E2-190, that big square window is still incredible.
Yeah, I think we're at this weird time in aviation history where it's like the regional jets are kind of the news, right? I mean, you got the E175s, the E190s, the E2 jets, the C Series, the Sukhois, Mitsubishi, the MRJ.
I saw a mock-up of that as well. They're bringing their hardware in for flight tests in Moses Lake starting this summer.
Oh, see? And so it's like this weird time of like regional jets. And so I think people kind of cut it off and say, oh, well, they're regional jets. Well, these aren't like your mom's E145 and CR2. Like these aren't the terrible rides of the past. And airlines seem to really be using these to fill markets in where they didn't want to have a big plane on before, and now you get a pretty decent ride. I mean, I'm thinking Portland, Austin. My wife just flew that. And she was like, that's a great plane. Like she loved it. It was E175. She was like, I'm happy to sit on that, the 2.2 with the bulkhead and endless leg room. She was like, that's great. And so I don't see the problem.
It's this weird thing of like, how often would you be happier on the larger E-jets than you would a 737 or an A320?
Yeah, I mean, anything but a transcon, I think I would always choose the E175. That sounds terrible, but I think it's a great plane.
I'm in the same boat as you. Yeah. I've said this before. I'll take, I fly JetBlue a decent amount, as we've talked about before, and I like their E90s. I arguably like them better than the 320s in many ways.
Yeah. You get, better seats, better windows, no middle seat. I think it's better all around for passengers, and so I'm okay with it. But does it? Are we seeing new markets, which we kind of are, come up, or are we seeing replacement of some of the mainline equipment? I mean, I've seen it like on Seattle, LA, on Delta. They're replacing mainline stuff with E170s and stuff. Yeah,
and the answer to that is yes. Right, we're seeing both. Same as the 787, sort of filling in old markets, but also establishing new ones.
Yeah.
The A350 will do the same thing as well. Fill in old markets, but establish new ones. So, it is both. I don't have the data to know, a split of which is which, but I think it's fair to say that these planes are doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you get to see the 787 display? The actual flight?
I did, I think. I know I saw the Max 8 fly, and I have photos of it. So the weather was absolute garbage. We had a monsoon on Monday that washed out the show. Literally, they closed the show early and evacuated people off the premises. There was standing water inside some of the exhibit halls that they had to turn off the power because they were worried it was going to flood the electricals.
Oh.
So that was awesome. Day 2 was also nasty weather, but they did fly some of it. They flew, like, day 1, they squeezed in the 3 Airbus planes and then scrapped everything. So Airbus wins for being early in the schedule. Day 2, they did more of the flying display, but not all of it because we still had rain. Day 3, we had rain again. It was nasty. It finally cleared up for the weekend. Arguably the good news is, like, the people who care from a media perspective, did all the locals come out and get to see the awesome airplanes? And they all did.
Oh, yeah.
Because the weather on Friday, Saturday, Sunday was great. But, and I saw Friday, I saw the F-35 fly. Yeah. Very loud.
The $1 billion paperweight.
Not stealthy at all. It's very loud. But I think I put a picture on Instagram or Twitter or something of it, like a movie of it hovering and doing its, like, spin in place. That was really cool. Really, really neat to see. And then Saturday, there's a 727. The last produced 727 is still flying. It's an oil spill response plane. It's based up in England, and it's got like sprayers on the back, which I guess is used to spray something to make the oil dissipate or break it up or something.
Yeah.
But they've got, it's like a crop duster with the bar, like the T-bar hanging off the tail. But it's for oil spills. So they had it go up and fly with some other airplanes and stuff in formation, and it was pretty cool.
That was pretty cool.
It's bright orange and white, sort of looking like TNT colors as a cargo carrier. It's not that, but it's similar enough looking, or Coast Guard orange. It was really neat, Joe, just like to see and hear a 727 flying again. And believe me, you hear
it. Speaking of interesting flights, did you see the video of the firefighter jet in California?
I did not. What did I miss?
It's a DC-10, and it's flying. It's got to be 50 feet above the ground. And he's like,
nice.
He drops the flame retardant stuff and kind of comes over a hill and then does like another run, and it looks like he's going to hit the mountain. And the guy's like just like flying it like no big deal. And the video is pretty crazy. I'll send a link so we can put it in the show notes. It was pretty incredible.
Nice. Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah. So I think that covers Farnborough. Did you have anything else?
I'm sure I do, but without a prompt, I'm not going to remember it at this point.
Oh, man.
So much.
So there's an article in the New York Times about passengers paying for first class rather than waiting for upgrades.
How dare they?
Yeah, amazing. I know. And I think it's something we've talked about before, like if you want to sit in first, just pay for first. I think it's just like the theme. And this article just kind of confirms something that we've seen anecdotally when we fly, where people are buying up to first, either upgrades at check-in or upgrades sometimes at booking, depending on the price. And this article goes into detail on why people are doing that. And it's kind of common sense for frequent flyers. I think it's kind of surprising for people who aren't in the frequent flyer world. What did you think?
I certainly believe, want first, buy first. I read through this now, and I don't know. I'm reading through these things, and some of the numbers I'm seeing, it's like this guy's Newark to Miami round trip was $400. And then he pays the $129 for an upgrade, or maybe not. There's one here that was it Burbank to Los Angeles was $488 or $388 round trip.
Oh, Seattle to Burbank.
Sorry, yeah, Seattle to Burbank. Yeah, not Burbank to Los Angeles. That would be stupid. I mean, that'd be awesome, but that would be stupid. Yeah, $388 round trip, and so by comparison, the refundable first class ticket was $900 at the time of booking, and so getting it for $388 plus $50 each way, so $500 ish, is definitely better than $900. But I don't know, like I think that $400 round trip on that kind of sucks as a fare.
Yeah, I mean it's
both of those.
It's an hour and a half flight, maybe 2 hours, and I can see it for $150 round trip every now and then. So
yeah, and and I was going to say even like $300 round trip is within the realm of reason for the distance it is in terms of the airline has to make money and yada yada yada. But I don't know. Like, some of this all comes down to like how cheap do you want the ticket to be where you also get a free upgrade?
Yeah.
Also, free isn't really free. So. Yep.
I think what the article kind of points out is that there's people who are kind of similar to the rest of us, where on a transcon or some a 5-hour flight, 4-hour flight, you're willing to pay a little bit of a premium to sit in first. Like me,
sure,
going up and down the West Coast, probably not going to buy an upgrade. One, it's a short flight. Two, what am I going to get in first? It's usually a snack, so I don't really care. But on a longer flight, say Portland to, I don't know, Houston or further, I might. I don't know. Because the upgrades are so hard.
Yeah, and I've bought a few here and there, and it's opportunistic for me as well. But, at the end of the day, I have to look at it as, where is my travel spend going? Almost all mine comes out of my own pocket still. So I have to decide, is this worth it versus taking another trip somewhere?
Yeah.
And for an hour or two, or quite frankly, I mean, coming over here for this trip, I did 5 hours, JFK to Keflavik in a middle seat in the back because
you're a good husband.
I'm a good husband. They weren't for sale at a reasonable price point, and I wanted to be able to take more trips.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, so it's all about what you value and pricing and what's your limit, and you have to kind of make those decisions for yourself and understand what the product that you're getting into is. So yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, right, the real numbers to remember in this, and Delta has named names or named numbers, so to speak, in terms of their targets. What we call the CPU, or UDU, whatever the free upgrades are called these days, medallion upgrades, those things. Delta's hoping to have that be less than 30%. So they want 70% of that forward cabin to be people who paid to be in the forward cabin.
Yep. So they're gonna price it. They're gonna price it as aggressively as they can when they can, right? I mean, they're gonna say, well, this market we don't want to fill the seats up with upgrades. Let's bump the price down to $69 one way for first upgrade versus what it was selling for originally, $300 or something more, and we'll fill those seats. We'll fill as many seats as we can at $69, and then we'll give it away the rest. But at least we're making something on those seats. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and right. That's basically it. And the counter to that is, but then people won't be loyal to you and buy, and book towards you in general.
Yeah, but where are they going to go?
So that's a very good question. I agree with you on that. And also, if that's happening equally across all of them, maybe the people who live in Atlanta no longer, are loyal to United and they just buy the faster flight on Delta, but the guy in Houston or Denver does the same thing to United. So
it evens out.
Yeah, I really think it does. I don't think this is going to see a seismic shift in sort of high value customer or loyal customer. Loyal is a terrible word to use. So I don't think this is going to change the numbers dramatically from a travel hacker perspective, the people who are playing the game and trying to get the free upgrades on cheap tickets all the time.
Yeah.
Also, quite frankly, I mean, American has changed. That's finally come on board with the revenue-based, elite status thing, and so we know that they too aren't going to have that many cheap elites anymore.
Yep.
Although I have to say, and we didn't have this on the agenda, but to talk about real quick, they did release their numbers for partner earning finally, and so you can earn elite qualifying dollars on partner travel, even if not on American stock.
Interesting.
And yeah, and it's, it's based on distance traveled, and it's sort of similar to the Delta, how they're doing RDMs for some of those things. So, there's weird ones like a BA flight in World Traveler Plus, their premium economy. If you buy the basic, like there's 2 different fare classes or 3 different fare classes, and the 2 cheap ones, you earn 20% credit so 20% of the distance flown counts as PQDs or EQDs. If you buy the full fare premium economy, it's 22%, because seriously, someone's an asshole and decided that it had to be a 22%. I'm sorry. I don't know whoever made that decision, and if you're a listener of ours, oops.
You're still an asshole.
I don't think personally you're an asshole, but like that decision was an asshole decision. 22%? Seriously? Like we've always known these programs are complicated. No one's supposed to understand the rules because that's how the airlines win. But 22? Like that's just mean. Yeah, it's mean-spirited.
It's a weird way to do math. I mean, I think I like the idea of being able to earn on partners.
I'm sure there's a reason for it, but
yeah.
No, I love it. Here's the weird one. If I qualify for elite status on American going forward, it's going to be on partner mistake fares.
Yeah, like British Airways sea fares and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or even, British Airways $400 fares to Europe or whatever.
$500 business class ticket from Oslo to JFK and back.
Yeah.
Would have earned me, it's like 8,000 round trip, and I think I would have earned 30 or 40%. So, I would have gotten a couple thousand EQDs for my $500 ticket.
Yeah. So I'm
never going to actually spend $12,000, but I could get or $6,000 for platinum. But I'm going to get damn close to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think if United went that route, like if they implemented something similar where you could earn on non-United stock, I think that's the key. Like there are some really good, well-priced tickets on Air Canada stock out of the Pacific Northwest, but you have to like trick it to try and get it to go through United stock. And I would love to give Starlines my business, but I'm not going to spend the money.
Sure. And there's all sorts of reasons around that, and who knows where they're going to end up. But I completely agree with you. There's opportunities to be had.
Yep.
And I like the way America, it's ironic that like all of a sudden this program that I never was going to qualify for because it would cost too much, it seems like I actually could. Yes, assuming mistake fares continue to happen, but I'm willing to bet on that.
Yeah, I think they'll happen. I think we haven't seen the end of them.
No. So long as humans are involved.
So last up, this past weekend, when this show was recorded on Sunday, so Friday night, there was a coup in Turkey. Still not really clear if it's truly failed. Yeah, it's not. I don't know for sure. Like the news is kind of vague on what's going on now. But you and I and some friends had a discussion about what would you do if you were in, say, Istanbul in the airport and this coup attempt is taking place as an American citizen. What do you do? Because the State Department didn't come out with anything for a few hours when this was all going on. And so I posed the question, what do you do? And you had an interesting answer.
Yeah, so in the airport is a little different. But the question when you originally posed it was, like, if you're in town, what do you do? And my answer was hurricane.
Yeah.
And it's silly, but I treat it like a hurricane. It's not, natural disaster or not. Get cash if you don't have any. And I would say if you can get to the front of the line at an ATM, I mean, there was a rush on the ATMs, but if you can get to one, take out whatever your daily allowance is, as much as you have in the bank, and then buy a crate of water, some, pretzels and some M&Ms, and go. You said you added canned peaches to the list. Not personally my favorite, but whatevs. And go ride it out. There's less sort of forecasting of what's going to happen, but odds of all of a sudden sort of hotels being targeted and blown up are pretty low. And that's, inside is going to be the safest place to be. Yeah. Don't go hang out in Taksim Square. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I think even like the hotel bar, like, I don't know if I would just like hang out in the hotel bar. I think I would hang out in my room. Like it's one thing to say,
yeah.
Especially in a popular side of town. I'm thinking, in Istanbul, if you're in a popular hotel with like a nightclub that's in the bottom floor or something, I don't know if I would be hanging out down there when this is all taking place. Maybe later on as things calm down, but when the crowds are going by, I don't think I would be, out and about. That would be my opinion.
It sucks because like the curious journalist / human nature in me says I should go out and see what's happening.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But that's a stupid thing to do.
Yeah, I think there's people, at the airport was really interesting because it seemed like complete chaos. Like just everything broke down, no security, people were out on the apron. I mean, it was completely nuts. So what do you do in a situation like that when you're in the airport? Do you stay in the airport? Do you leave? I would say almost just stay put.
Yeah, hide in a corner.
Yeah, hide in a corner
if you can. Seriously, shelter in place, right? I mean, that was ultimately the advice that was given, but I really think that sort of shelter in place 99 times out of 100 is the right answer. If you're in immediate physical danger, right? If the tanks actually made it into the airport and like they started shooting at things,
Yeah.
hiding in the corner is a bad plan. Get away from that. But generally speaking, stay quiet and stay hidden.
Yeah.
Even if it's in a bit of in plain sight, just out of the way.
And do you think this is like a good reminder to people that having a data plan of some sort in an international country is probably a good idea, regardless if you're going to use it for whatever, but just to have it as a backup if something like this was to happen, so you could get State Department, like if you need to send a text message, or call the State Department or call the embassy in the country you're in.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is having a functional device. I don't even know that you need to sort of prepay for the data plan so much as being willing to spend the $4 a minute if it comes to, when the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if I'm not going to use the phone otherwise, I wouldn't necessarily pay it up to have that access. The other thing to consider though is, they did cut off a lot of the data services.
Yep.
Right? We heard reports that Facebook was down, Twitter was down, Periscope still worked because apparently they hadn't figured out that was the thing yet. Right? Next time around, Periscope will go down too, I'm sure. So part of it is like there are challenges from that front.
Yeah.
And that's a little scary that, we forget that like, all the traffic does go through one point or one connection to like the rest of the world for some countries. And so you got to be careful with that. But
absolutely,
I feel a little badly. A couple episodes back, we were talking about, I think it was back in March when the last round of bombings happened and in Turkey, in Istanbul. And my comment was, the government is sort of hiding data and we just don't know what's going on there. So it's really hard to know if it's safe. And then, so I wouldn't go. And then this went and happened. So I feel badly that my point of view was slightly vindicated, or proven, but, it happens.
Yeah. And, it's sad because I still don't think that we get all the information today.
Oh, no. I mean, there was a reporter for one of the local newspapers that had a tweet that was to the effect of, when the coup was happening, our prime minister begged us to support him. We all did, and now 2 days later, he shut us all down and blocked all of our transmissions.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's still crazy shit going on with the government there.
Yeah, and so I think it's a message to people to say, it's not like, oh, don't go visit a place. It's know what's going on in a place before you go, so that if something, you need to know what's kind of the background of the location you're going. And Turkey is a place where the information isn't coming out as well as you think it is. And I think that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yep. Well, I know it's getting late where you are. I think you're 8 hours ahead of me, so it's like 9:00, 9:15 at night. So I think it's.
Yeah, something like that. I should probably go have another beer. They're so good here. Seriously.
Do you have a type?
Good.
Do you have a type that you like?
I'm drinking ales mostly. It turns out that Norwich has a few proper pubs that brew their own.
Interesting.
They're really good. So. I mostly just walk in and ask them for like a bitters or an ale or something that's slightly darker than not, hopefully not tremendously alcoholic. The one I had at dinner was something called a mild that was like, I think it was less than 4%, but just really good flavors.
Nice. I think something I've been recommending to people is ESBs and bitters beer. I love them, and I think they're welcoming to new beer drinkers because of the flavor. They have a good flavor, less bitter. It's not actually bitter. That's the funny part.
Yeah.
So, but
not hoppy.
Not hoppy. So, well, thanks, Seth, for calling from all the way over in England. If you would like to follow Dots, Lines, and Destinations, you can follow us on Twitter at DotsLines. If you'd like to leave a comment, moredotsmorelines.com. And we're also on iTunes. You can leave a comment there. We're happy to hear from you. So thanks for listening. Bye-bye now.
Take care.